Let's talk Tanya for the 20th day of the first Adar. So we are in the middle of a large conversation about not judging, condescending another until you're actually in their place, which obviously is an impossibility. Everyone has their own circumstances, their own challenges, their own tests, their own temperament and desires. And ultimately, we have to deal with our own struggles and our own challenges. And if we're not doing so great in our own personal challenges, how can we judge or condescend someone who isn't doing so well in their area of challenges? And yesterday's Tanya, the Rebbe said, but one second, if that person is doing terrible things and you're just not exerting yourself enough in the area of holiness, how can you compare the two? This is called surmira. That person is not abstaining from doing that which is wrong, and you're merely not doing good enough in va'asei toiv, in the positive realm. So yesterday the Rebbe says it really doesn't make a difference. Surmira, asei toiv, doing that which is wrong, as opposed to not doing that which is right. It's all about what God wants from you. God wants this, God wants that. It's all the same. Nevertheless, in today's Tanya, the Rebbe says the truth is, if you were to look closely at yourself, you'll surely realize that even in the area of surmira, even in the area of staying away from doing that which you shouldn't be doing, there are also subtle areas in which you could be doing better, in which you're struggling and you're failing at that struggle. For example, Lashon Hara, the Rebbe says. Lashon Hara means speaking negatively about others. You're going to say, well, I don't speak Lashon Hara. I know, but there are subtle forms of Lashon Hara. And the Rebbe gives an interesting example from the Talmud to bring out his point. The Talmud tells us that there was one of the great sages, his name was Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, known as Rabbi Yehuda the Prince. And he was once teaching, and the class was in front of him, and someone brought in a get, a bill of divorce, a divorce document, and fully explaining what this is all about. It's well beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about over here today. But the bottom line is, in the olden times, if a kohen, a priest, wanted to give a get, a divorce, it was a very intricate, special type of divorce. It was called a get mekusher. It was a sewn-up get, which had there many, many laws, complicated laws, in how to exactly write up and sew up this particular type of divorce document. So a get mekusher was written up and was brought in, and Rebbe examined it, and he was displeased. It was kosher, it was fine, but he felt that there were certain things that were done, and they could have been done better. And Rebbe was under the impression that his son, Reb Shimon, was the one who had written this get and was the one who was in charge of the process. And when Reb Shimon realized that his father thought that it was him, he told his father, Lav ana kasve Yehuda Chayta kasve. I didn't write this. I had nothing to do with this. It was Yehuda Chayta who wrote it. And when Rebbe heard his son saying that, Rebbe told his son, Klach me Lashon Hara. Stay away from Lashon Hara. Now think about this for a second. This wasn't someone who had evil intention. He wasn't trying to badmouth someone else. It wasn't so bad. First of all, the other person hadn't done any sort of heinous crime. Simply that in an area which is a very complex halacha, he had missed a detail or two, which did not invalidate the divorce. And over here you had the son, Reb Shimon, who wanted to avoid the displeasure of his father and wanted to exonerate himself, so to say. And nevertheless, Rebbe wasn't happy. He said, you could have said, I didn't write it. You didn't have to say who did write it. And if we're to stop and think about ourselves, how often we're guilty of something of this sort, of saying something negatively about someone else, even when there isn't a malicious intent. So again, there are examples of, even in areas of surmira, of things that we do which are damaging things. If we look closely, we'll realize that we have certain areas of struggle which we're not perfect in. And then the Alter Rebbe gives another example. The idea of Kadesh Atzacha Muterlach. We know there's a mitzvah in the Torah. We discussed this earlier in chapter 27. A mitzvah in the Torah that even in the area which is totally permitted to us, but we're supposed to be holy. We're not supposed to indulge more than we need. We're supposed to try to be refined and holy. That is an area of surmira. When we go and we indulge improperly and not in a holy way, that's also, we're doing something wrong. So if we look closely, we will see that there are also areas in which we can improve, also in the area of surmira, of staying away from that which is wrong. Now, let us recall what we started this chapter with. We started this chapter by saying, V'hevi shfal ruach b'fnei kol adam, we're supposed to be humble before every single person, which means we're supposed to look up at everyone. Over the last few days, I think we've done a fabulous job explaining why we're not supposed to look down at anyone. But if another person is doing terrible things, you're telling me I shouldn't look down on them because they have their struggles, I have my struggles, I get that. But in what way am I inferior to them? Why should I be looking up at them? And the answer to that we will get in tomorrow's Tanya.